Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast, a proud part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Amanda.
And we're your hosts.
We're a traveling couple and digital nomads taking you on our adventures as we explore locations, destinations, and careers.
Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the World Wanderers podcast. We are really excited that you're joining us for today's episode of the show. We are doing a little bit of a life update because it's been since we did our year in review episode in December that we've given a little life update, and we've had lots of big changes over here.
Yeah, we've had lots of interesting interviews going out on the podcast feed, but wanted to just take some time to talk about what we've been up to. If you follow along on social media, you'll see a few things of our kind of day-to-day life and obviously the big life updates. But if you're just listening through the podcast, you know that we are expecting a baby. You'll know that, we were starting to settle down here in Mexico, but you won't know really what we've been up to for the past few months. So we wanted to take the time to do one of our life update episodes. Probably attempt to do it like once a quarter. But yeah, to kick things off, I think the last time we were really chatting about where we were at, what we were doing, was at the end of 2021. We had arrived in Queretaro, Mexico after our big adventure down from Canada, driving all the way down here, setting up in our apartment. We're actually in a different home now in the same city, actually very, very close to where we were living before, but have moved into a different home, have taken a few smaller trips, and we're starting to look ahead at travel plans for the rest of the year. So where do you think would be the best place to start?
I think maybe an update on our biggest life update, which is our little girl who arrived in February.
Yeah, that's probably a good place to start. When you're like biggest life update, I was like, what could that be? We got a air fryer from our friend Mick.
It's a pretty big life update. And if you're a nomad of any sorts, then you actually know that having an air fryer is like kind of a big commitment, since normally you just have a couple of bags and stuff like that. Air fryer is like, ooh, we're like here for the long run.
Yeah. And speaking of here for the long run, Louise Ferguson was born in February. She's very healthy. It's quite the experience. I think obviously there's a ton of very well-known common cliches about how it changes your life and, all that. You can't describe the experience, all that type of stuff, which definitely feel like is true. But for us, we haven't, our lives as kind of nomads and travel podcasters, I feel like has shifted quite a bit where we've been really focused on family. So we want to just kind of talk through the lead up in January and then like the experience of getting used to being parents.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess where do we start? I think in our update episode for 2021, we would have talked about our last big trip, which was in end of November, beginning of December. We went to Puerto Vallarta for 2 weeks and hung out with some friends. And then basically we've just been settled here ever since. When we came back from that trip, I was 32 weeks pregnant. So I was very, very big and due pretty quick. So we had a pretty chill Christmas time. We just hung out, the two of us. We made cookies, we made eggnog, just had a really relaxing time, watched lots of movies and just, soaked in time with each other since we knew baby Lou was going to be coming soon. And then we went to San Miguel de Allende on New Year's Eve, but just for the day. We weren't looking to do like anything rowdy on New Year's Eve, but we went for the day and it was really beautiful, super, super busy. And that was kind of our last real like day trip I think that we took during my pregnancy, because basically January 1st hit and we were basically a month out from when baby was supposed to arrive. So it was like 36 weeks pregnant at that point, which is, if you've been pregnant before, that is, you're very big, you're very uncomfortable, and it was very warm and all of those types of things. So we kind of just like nested and relaxed a lot through January. And then obviously through February as well, since babe came. One highlight during January is we got a surprise visit from our friend Becky Gillespie, who, if you've listened to the podcast for a while, she's been a recurring guest on the show. And she's actually the reason we even know about Queretaro. So we have her to thank for us living here, really, I think, since we came here to visit her in December 2020 and really fell in love with the city. And yeah, she surprised us with a visit. And I was kind of like, yeah, for sure, I can get together with you as long as I don't go into labor. And thankfully, I was many, many weeks off of labor. Little did I know. And yeah, it was really great to see her and catch up with, another nomad friend.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so for us, really through January and then what turned out into February as well, just a lot of kind of not waiting around, but a little bit of that sense where you're kind of just waiting for the big event to happen. Ended up taking almost 10 days more than estimated.
Yeah, I was like 8 days past my due date by the time Babes arrived.
So we definitely got into the phase of being like, oh, it could happen at any moment, feeling really nervous to like, okay, let's do it. Let's make it happen.
I think I had a moment where I was just like, I loved being pregnant overall, which I know is a little bit weird, but after going like a week past my due date, I was pretty over it. And I was kind of like, this baby's never coming out. She's just going to start paying rent to live in my stomach and she's just going to be in here forever. She's never going to come out. But thankfully she did.
Yeah. And we had, I think, done quite a bit of good preparation work. So we had made lots of food in the freezer. I was taking some time off of work. We kind of planned ahead with our podcast stuff. Kind of same for you with your work. And so once the baby did arrive, we were just able to really focus in for 3 weeks on just, getting used to that life. And we also had the pleasure of hosting our parents here. They arrived about 2 weeks after. And we're here, both sets of parents, for 2 weeks, which was fun as well to see them get to meet Louise and start to, get to know their granddaughter, but also because Mexico and traveling is something that's really, a big part of our lives. And we haven't really had the chance in a number of years to travel with either of our parents. So getting to see them come here and kind of play host and kind of show them some of the things that we like was also really cool as well.
Yeah, I mean, your mom had never been to Mexico. Your dad hadn't been since like 1970, I think, or sometime in the 70s. And my parents have really only been to some of the more touristic destinations like Cancun, Cabo, Tulum, Playa del Carmen, those types of places. So it was fun to have them all here and get them to see a little bit of central Mexico. So we sent them on some tours and got them to check out some of the smaller towns that are around Queretaro and hopefully just, got them toured around the city as well so they could really get familiar with where we lived and that type of thing. And it's definitely cool because I think we've traveled so many places and of course we have photos and we have podcast episodes and whatnot, and we can tell our families about these experiences or show them on FaceTime where they live. But I think it was really fun to actually have them here and take them to some of our favorite restaurants and whatnot. Of course, on top of having them meet Lou and that type of thing. That was obviously quite special too, but just being able to bring them into our life a little bit, I think was quite nice.
Yeah. And so I think for me, looking on that stretch of time to February, March, one of the big things that stands out for me is just, I feel like we got to know on another level, just all the Mexican bureaucracy, which was fun for ourselves, extending our residencies and kind of jumping through a whole bunch of hoops that we won't bother you with here, but just many more trips to the immigration office than you'd think. And then the process for all the paperwork that goes with, having a baby. And we're still in the process of a lot of that stuff. So we got to go to a lot of different offices and see a lot of different things and learn about a lot of different papers and tests and as well, kind of making a bunch of trips to different types of medical stuff to get eyes, ears, hips, and all these other different checks that you get. So it was fun. And I think for us as well, like as we're both, continuing to learn and improve our Spanish, continuing to feel like more and more like, this is kind of becoming home for us. It's like a cool challenge. And also, it definitely feels like you're learning. You learn so much about how the way things work and different situations. You have to learn how to navigate and the different words that are involved and all that type of stuff. So I think that's been really fun as well.
It's kind of interesting because you used the word fun along with immigration office in like the same sentence. And that's not something I ever would have imagined you doing, especially after this last process of renewing residency.
Fun as in like, oh, it's like a interesting puzzle that you've figured out. Obviously at the time, not the most fun activity.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know if we'll talk too much about the residency, but I think we'll probably do, once we've sorted out getting the baby her passport, since she is obviously Mexican, and then through us, she will also be Canadian. I think we'll do a podcast episode talking a little bit more about the bureaucracy and just what it's like to actually have a baby abroad. But we'll save that for another episode, since like Ryan said, we are still in the process of kind of figuring all that out. But yeah, we got really familiar with immigration office, the office to get a birth certificate, the process for getting a passport for, you know, a baby who's born abroad, to parents who are from a different country, to getting a local passport. Renewing temporary residency, renewing immigration permits for cars. And then we also just recently went through the process of signing a lease here. And somehow we've been able to, you know, over the last, I guess, 5 years of living off and on in Mexico, we've been able to not do the official process of doing it's called like a polizza. We've been able to not do that somehow, but we had to do it for this place that we're now renting. And so we also went through the process of like getting a background check or whatever, so we could actually sign a lease here.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel like, just like I was kind of saying before, just kind of learning about Mexico on a different level than we have been before. I feel like we're definitely more to when we like meet someone who's kind of newer to this stuff. We can walk them through like, oh, no, like here are all the steps and all the tricks and all the roundabouts you need to go. So that was cool. And for us, we've been here. So we got to Queretaro just after the start of October, which means we've been here for
7 months.
7 months, which is a really long time for us. I think if you counted the cities that we've spent more than 7 months in, obviously like native hometowns, Calgary, Canmore, Mexico City,
Atlanta.
And now here, I think, would be the only other one on the list.
Yeah.
So kind of getting to know the city on a different level, just as you do kind of, you know, the things you'll do over a long stretch of time versus a short period of time. Still don't feel really at all like I'm tired of it, which I guess we could talk about that. We recently signed another year-long lease, and so we're kind of planning on staying pretty settled here. But what are some of the things we've kind of like learned about the city that we've done recently over the past couple months that have kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, well, I think it'll be interesting because I think our experiences of this have been slightly different just since you're back at work and I'm still on maternity leave. And I've met a number of other moms in this community, and this city is jam-packed, full of expats. It is super family friendly. And so I feel like I've just been kind of in these like mom groups, like Facebook, WhatsApp, Messenger. I've had like all these different group events that I've been going to, from play dates to brunch dates to business meetups and that type of thing. And I feel like that's been a really amazing experience, because while we love digital nomad life and we have a really good group of digital nomad friends, the hard thing is that you're often not in the same place. Like, it's really cool when you get situations like Becky coming through here and us being here at the same time, or our friend Mick, who is also here at the same time, or, you know, being able to go back to PV and seeing our friends, you know, Nathan, Mitko, Sarah, who you guys have all heard on the podcast before, who were living there, and being able to reconnect with them. But, you know, there's a lot of people that we're friends with that we just don't cross paths with that much because they're not in the same like country or city as us. And for me, I think it's been really nice to actually like dive into like the expat and the local community a little bit more and meet people who are not just going to leave in the next couple of weeks or the next month, you know, because while I love that and we've done that for so long, it's also nice to meet people who are sticking around.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one of the things you feel a little bit here over the past 2 years, and really before, but especially over the past 2 years. We've always thought Mexico would be kind of one of the biggest digital nomad countries in the world, just because of its openness, the amount of things going on, beautiful places to be, cost of living, and also proximity to Canada and the US. And I think that's really kind of come to pass, especially over the past couple of years. But the hubs, you know, are Mexico City, Playa del Carmen, Puerto Vallarta, even maybe some places like Oaxaca City. And Querétaro, I think, gets it's on the list for a lot of people. We talked about kind of off the radar stuff in a previous episode. I don't think it's really that off the radar, but it does seem to be a place that attracts more people who are looking for a certain sense of stability, maybe have been a number of other places and are like, okay, I'm just trying to settle down for a bit, make a community, where some of these other places are like, more kind of fast paced and a bit more fleeting in terms of how people are approaching their lives there. So I think that's one of the things I've really liked about the city is, you meet people and then those people know people and then they meet, connect you with other people. And we talked a bit about this as well, but lots of stuff to do. It's one of those cities that doesn't have kind of those like huge, big attractions. Like there's no Statue of Liberty or Eiffel Tower or, certain things.
Chichen Itza, Caribbean coast.
That are like, oh my God, you absolutely have to see this. Not a ton of stuff that sticks out like that, but just so much like nice stuff to do. So we've been super, super happy having a car here, especially, just getting out of the town, going to different places, and also just getting to see stuff that's within the city. So that's been awesome. We've taken one road trip we're going to talk about in a second. And then later in the episode, we're going to talk about another road trip we have planned, and we'll probably do at least another one later on. I feel like I'm fully I shouldn't say that, but I'm getting very acclimatized and very accustomed to driving in at least Queretaro. I don't think driving everywhere in Mexico I think this is probably one of the more chill places to drive.
Yeah, I've gotten a little bit more accustomed to driving on my own as well. And I was thinking the other day while I was driving, like, yeah, there's some like wild stuff going on, but like we lived in Atlanta for almost a year and there was some wild, wild things happening in that city on the roads. Like I feel like that kind of prepared me for driving here. I don't feel like it's like that different, maybe different in different ways, but not that different. But yeah, I think you kind of touched on one of the things we really like about the city, and it's that it's very livable. And I think that we've tried a lot of cities in Mexico, and I think for me, this is probably the most livable city. Like I really enjoyed living in Merida, and I think that Merida is like quite livable, but it's very, very hot there, which makes it a little bit more challenging. And then of course, like PV is great, but it's super touristic, it's expensive, it's busy. Mexico City is obviously a very livable city, but just with it being so big and the poor air quality, it feels like, just not as pleasant to be in, I guess you could say. And then I'd say there's similar things about Guadalajara.
Yeah. And I think for us, especially with Mexico City, and this would apply to PV and in Guadalajara, just like when you shift from being like a couple to thinking about like later stages of pregnancy to having a baby, just the stuff that makes those attractions so great are things that you want to do when you're like, an adult, not things you want to do as a family. So like in Mexico City, it's going to concerts, it's going to bars, it's going to restaurants, like, oh, there's new restaurants of different varieties and stuff like that. Whereas, once you have a baby, you're not trying to do that stuff. You're not going to concerts. You're not going like to big events. So a lot of the things that bring you there aren't as attractive. And then the things that you kind of put up with for all those pros, like the air quality, the noise, the, lack of quiet sleep, that type of stuff kind of grinds at you even more.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. I definitely hear that.
One thing I did want to mention, just as we talk about the different stuff about nomads in Mexico and how we've kind of been experiencing that. Something people should know, especially if you're someone who's like planning on coming to Mexico to work and maybe travel around for a more significant chunk of time, is really since this past November, they've been kind of giving people a lot more problems on entering. So just make sure to do a little bit of research about that. If you're planning on coming for a couple months, just go online, do your research, to know kind of what that situation's like before just assuming you can get the 180 days. And also, if you're someone who's thought about like doing residency in Mexico, we have an episode where we talk about our experience getting our temporary residencies. But if you're thinking like, hey, over the next couple of years, I'd love to spend a decent amount of time in Mexico over various months doing the digital nomad thing or whatever it might be, definitely highly encourage you to kind of get on it right away because, it seems like it's busy and also seems like you never know what's changing over time.
Yeah, definitely. And we got our residency just over a year ago. So last February is when we first got approved. And then I guess we just got our cards like pretty much exactly a year ago. I think it was like mid-April or something like that when we fully had them in hand. Like, we can leave the country now, we can travel with these. And that's something we really haven't regretted. And I know we've got a number of friends who have been spending at least half the year in Mexico who have now gone through the process as well, just because it makes it a little bit easier to be here. And like Ryan said, with, countries cracking down on immigration and specifically Mexico kind of tightening things up a little bit, it just, gives that peace of mind. And it definitely helped us, I think, too, when we went to get our house and stuff like that, to be able to say we're residents, we don't have to leave and try to do a border run and that type of thing. And I think too, just having a baby, it's also made it a lot more I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? It's made it a lot more secure for us, especially because it's taken a lot longer to get a lot of the paperwork than we kind of expected. And we'll talk about this in a future episode, but I kind of just thought it was hey, you get a birth certificate when a baby's born. Not the case. Hey, once you got a birth certificate, you just go get a passport. That should be pretty simple. Not so straightforward when you're born to foreign parents and, when your baby's born in a foreign country, et cetera, et cetera. So there's definitely been a number of roadblocks with that. And just, I can't imagine the additional stress I would feel if it's hey, we can't travel with her because she has no documentation to leave the country, but we can only stay here for X period of time.
Yeah, for sure. Do you want to talk a little bit about the travel recently?
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, because we don't have the documentation we need to leave Mexico with our baby, we are currently only able to do domestic travel.
And we wouldn't, even if we had it. I don't think anything was really pulling us out up to this point anyway.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great point to mention. We haven't really felt the desire to go anywhere internationally at this point, just because, she is so little and there's a lot going on in the world right now, which we're definitely not getting into any of that stuff. But you guys know there's a lot happening in the world right now. And just with her being so small, I think we want to kind of introduce her to travel in a way that is, I guess, slower and kind of makes travel feel fun, even though she's really little and stuff like that and not quite making conscious memories. But we decided to start by taking some road trips. So we took a couple of very, very small road trips. We went out to a cheese factory, cheesery that we really like. That's about 45 minutes away from here. We took her there when our parents were here and she did great. She's really great in her car seat and she does great in the car. She usually just, stares in the mirror that's in front of her or kind of looks out the window or falls asleep. More often than not, she's been falling asleep, but she's usually pretty chill. So that went really well. And then we took another road trip to this really cool spot that's right outside of San Miguel de Allende called Valle de los Senderos. And it's kind of like this man-made lake beach situation, and you pay to go in and it's just really pleasant. We got a cabana for the day. We took baby Lou for her first little swim, which was fun. And that was about an hour and she did really good with that too. And so then we decided we actually needed to go for part of this whole Mexican bureaucracy thing we've been doing, but we went to Pachuca, which is in the state of Hidalgo, which is a neighboring state to Queretaro. And yeah, we decided Pachuca is fine. It's a fine city, nothing really to write home about. But we decided to go to a Pueblo Mágico that was really close to there called Mineral del Monte. Do you want to talk a little bit about that place?
Yeah, and just kind of talking about, so Pachuca relative to Querétaro is, if you were kind of drawing Mexico City, Pachuca, and Querétaro on a map, it'd kind of be like a triangle where the point was Mexico City. So they're all relatively close. Pachuca especially, I think, is maybe only an hour outside. So to get from Querétaro there, you drive almost like you're going all the way to Mexico City, turn off just before you get there in Mexico State, and then you go up to Pachuca, which I don't know exactly how many people live there. We looked it up on Wikipedia while we were driving in, and it said a couple 100,000. And you look at the city and you're like, there's no chance. This is way bigger than a couple 100,000 person city. I believe it used to be kind of like a mining center for Mexico. Definitely feel a little bit more chaotic than Querétaro. We saw some crazy traffic stuff going on over the time. And then, yeah, like you mentioned, so Mineral del Monte is 45 minutes from Pachuca up into the mountains. It's actually at a quite high elevation and used to be an old mining town. I'm pretty sure the mine doesn't operate anymore, but there's a place called Mineral del Chico, which is another really small town very close to that. And those two kind of are a common trip for people to go see together. And so small town kind of nestled up into the mountains. There's like pine trees around. And at some point, English miners had come over and worked the mines there. And so there's a bit of an English feel to the town, although it still feels very Mexican while you're there. But it was a really cool place. And I think somewhere where we definitely love to go back to and also get out to Mineral del Chico.
Yeah, for sure. I think though, while of course it does feel Mexican since it's inhabited by Mexican people now, I think that if you have traveled a little bit of Mexico and you kind of just pay attention to the architecture, I mean, the houses and the way that they're built and developed is like quite different in Mineral del Monte. You see actual like pointed roofs with, I think it was probably like tin on them, which is really not traditional for Mexico in any way. And we put the baby in her little baby carrier and walked her through the town because it's very hilly, very cobblestone, small, tiny little streets. If you've been to Guanajuato City, that kind of style of streets where it's like very kind of windy and chaotic is sort of how this place is as well. And we were able to go up to a viewpoint and look out over the city, and there's just beautiful mountains, beautiful nature surrounding it. And then, this little town that's like nestled in there, and it just looks so different from like any other little pueblo that we've been to in Mexico. So pretty interesting. And one of the reasons we were kind of interested in this town and knew about it is it's actually in a book called Mexican Gothic, which we've both read. They kind of base the story around that town. It's called something different in the book, but they base the story around this town.
Yeah, really cool place. I think somewhere where it wouldn't be on the radar for most people going traveling, but it's cool and definitely would be day trippable from Mexico City as well. So that was really interesting. And then for looking ahead in the coming weeks here, we're taking another road trip to Valle de Bravo, which is in Mexico State, and about 3.5 hours driving from here as well. So that'll be interesting to kind of go not the opposite direction, but a new route, get some more exposure to driving and road tripping in Mexico, and check out a new place that we also haven't been, despite having heard about it a whole bunch of times over many years.
Yeah, it's kind of considering we lived in Mexico City for almost a year and have spent quite a bit of time in and around that area. I think it is a little bit, I don't know, surprising, strange that we haven't been there. But I mean, there's like a million day trips that you can do from Mexico City that we haven't done. So yeah, we're excited to do that. And I think it'll be about 3 or 4 hours driving.
Yeah, something like that.
So yeah, getting the baby kind of accustomed to another longer road trip. And then we don't know exactly what our plans are in the coming months, but I think we kind of want to do maybe like some smaller day trips from Queretaro. There's quite a bit of like interesting towns and nature around here. So like we did in the fall with our trip to Jalpan in the Sierra Gorda Mountains, I think we'd like to do some like other, trips like that. And then also just maybe take some other trips, maybe get the baby on a plane at some point. Who knows?
Yeah, definitely want to get to the beach at some point. And then, I think there's still a lot to be determined over the course of the summer, what we're going to do and where we're going to go. But probably taking at least one trip during those summer months somewhere as well.
Yeah, for sure. And then we're in the process of working on baby's passports. So hopefully we'll be able to do something outside of Mexico sometime this year. Maybe take her back to Canada so she can meet more of our family and friends. Maybe get to the US to see some friends there, some good friends. I don't know, maybe go to Central America, maybe the Caribbean, maybe Europe. The world is our oyster.
It is.
But we'll obviously keep you guys posted on what we decide to do. But I think for now, we've got Valle de Bravo planned. And then we've got some other places kind of on our list here that we're just going to slowly work through and just introducing the baby to more places, more states, hopefully seeing some new places ourselves as well.
Yeah. And I think kind of as we start wrapping stuff up here with this episode, how has like the early days of having a baby kind of met your like expectations or what you thought when, we first got pregnant and were thinking about being at this stage?
I feel like asking how my baby meets my expectations is a weird question.
No, just how does the experience compare to kind of what you thought it might be like?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I hear you. Baby exceeds expectations, just in case anyone's wondering how I feel about her. It's been like amazing and challenging and busy and not busy at the same time. And I don't know that there's like anything that anyone can say or do that ever really prepares you for the experience. And obviously every birth is different and every baby is different. And I just feel like it's been really amazing to like watch her grow and develop even in the last like 3 months that she's been here with us. And just getting to know her and her personality has been really fun. So I think overall it's definitely been, tiring and maybe a little bit more challenging in moments than I'd expected, but very, very, very much worth it. And I think just there's no way that you can kind of describe the love you feel for a child that you give birth to somebody who hasn't experienced that. It's just like nothing I've ever experienced before. What about you?
Yeah, I feel like thinking about it now and looking back on the whole experience, I didn't really know what to expect. So I think beforehand, I feel like you just think about the moment of like, oh, I hope everything's okay. I hope she's okay. I hope she doesn't have any anything that's wrong. Like I hope we're all going to be able to be healthy. I think kind of overall, like we've been really, really lucky with her. And she's been really calm. She's been a good sleeper. So yeah, I feel like there's nothing really like it. It's interesting just kind of going through these experiences where, so much just, it makes you reframe so much of, the stuff you want to do. And like we've talked about with travel plans, having a travel podcast, but maybe feeling a little bit less like of the urges to go travel because you're just kind of so focused on this stuff. So it's been a really incredible experience. And I'm just really excited to see kind of how things continue to change and develop over time.
Yeah, for sure. We had some nomad friends over for dinner just like a week ago, and they were asking like, oh, you've been here for 7 months. Like that's a really long time for you guys. The last time we were somewhere for this long was when we were stuck in Canada due to the pandemic. So certainly not by choice. And yeah, they were asking us if we were feeling kind of itchy feet or the urge to go. And I think that there's a lot of just really like natural instinctive things that happen with pregnancy, birth, having a baby. But I was kind of like, no, I really feel like nesting a little bit, which I think is quite hormonal and stuff like that. But I think we've just really enjoyed kind of settling into the city and making friends and building community and, just spending like a lot of time with the baby, getting to know her. And obviously we want to travel with her, but she's still so little. So we're not in a rush to, take her to all 7 continents or anything while she's so tiny. So we've just been, I think, just soaking up time as a family of 3 and just enjoying being here now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that kind of is a nice kind of endpoint for this episode. We'll keep you guys up to date on our travels as we take some trips here in Mexico and then some bigger ones in the summer. Have lots of interesting interviews as well. Some cool people living more adventurous lives than we are at the current moment coming down the pipeline. Let us know your travel plans. Let us know where you're headed. If you're, taking a trip, if you're starting like a bigger journey, starting to work and travel, would love to hear all that stuff. You can always connect with us on social media, or you can send us an email to our email address, which is
info@theworldwanderers.com, or we're at The World Wanderers Podcast on Facebook and Instagram.
All right. Until next time.
Thanks for listening. Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you want more, make sure to check out The World Wanderers Insider, available on Patreon at patreon.com/theworldwanderers.
For show notes, head over to theworldwanderers.com. Find us on social media at The World Wanderers Podcast and join the private Facebook community at World Wanderers, a community for travelers.
You can always get in touch with us at info@theworldwanderers.com. And if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps us find new listeners.
See you next time.